and welcome to Community Dialogue presented by the Henry County Chamber of Commerce and proudly sponsored by Kaiser Permanente. I'm Christy Chewning. August is National Black Business Month, a time to recognize the important contributions of Black-owned businesses while also examining the challenges and opportunities that impact their ability to start, grow, and thrive. Today, we're discussing capital access. Access to capital remains one of the most significant challenges facing most entrepreneurs, but understanding where to find funding is only part of the equation. Building strong banking relationships, knowing how to prepare for financial opportunities, exploring alternative lending options, and developing financial literacy are all critical to long-term business success. We are joined by three outstanding guests who bring expertise in economic development, business lending, banking, and financial empowerment. Thank you all for being here. I would like to introduce Mia Pressley. She is the Regional Economic Development Manager with Georgia Power. Mia, welcome.
Thank you.
And Jasmine Ames. She is a Commercial Loan Officer with ACE, Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Charles Moon. He is a workplace banking and financial empowerment leader and vice president with Truist Bank in the South Metro Atlanta Consumer and Small Business Banking Division.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Charles. Mia, from an economic development perspective, why is access to capital so important for a business's growth and long-term success in the communities they serve?
Well, first, let me say I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, especially during National Black Business Month. Access to capital is critical because it determines whether a business can move from a good idea to real growth. Capital allows business owners to hire employees, purchase equipment, invest in technology, expand operations, and compete for larger opportunities. So capital is important. And for many minority-owned businesses, limited access to financing can be a major barrier that slows growth and expansion. From an economic development perspective, the impact goes beyond one business. When minority-owned businesses grow, they create jobs, generate local investment, strengthen commercial corridors, and create pathways for entrepreneurship and wealth building within the communities they serve. So capital is not just about funding a business transaction. It is about creating opportunities for long-term business success, stronger communities, and more inclusive economic growth.
Thank you. Jasmine, when entrepreneurs come to ACE and they're seeking financing, what are some common challenges or misconceptions that you see when it comes to being prepared to access that capital?
That's a great question, Christy. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when the bank says no, right, when the entrepreneur is looking for traditional funding, they think that that's the end of the road. But that's honestly not the end of the road. In reality, it means kind of maybe not yet, or maybe we're not the right lender for right now, right? So I would say a biggest challenge would be to ensure that the client has prepared the proper documentation for the funding, and to make sure they have like a complete understanding of what it is they're asking for, right? So it's difficult to overcome insufficient or even incomplete financials, such as like the profit and loss statement or the balance sheet. But sometimes entrepreneurs have a hard time completing like the personal financial statement or a debt schedule in its entirety, right? Which pretty much explains what the business current debt obligations are. So I would say that's one of the biggest challenges. But the client should also, of course, have a plan for the uses of capital. So you want to make sure you understand exactly what you're asking for and exactly what you're going to use it for. Because for us as lenders, our job is to kind of hold you accountable. You know, if this is something that you've asked for because it was going to scale your business, then we want to make sure that that is exactly what you did with the capital.
Yes, thank you so much. Charles, many entrepreneurs think that they only need to approach a bank when they need the money. Why should you be building a banking relationship long before you need financing?
First off, I want to say Jasmine and Mia gave great examples of when to engage. I think that the bigger challenge here is exactly what you mentioned, right? I think that people have to understand that when you talk about financing, it is about relationships, right? Long gone are the days where we used to just be able to shake hands and get a deal done. Now we actually have to what? We have to treat your business like an actuary process. And so all of that is great. The numbers are great. The documentation is great. Having all of the stuff in line are great. But it really comes down to how do you get those doors open? How do you know that you're having the right conversation with the right person? And that can only begin with a relationship. And so what I always tell people is that you want to have the ABCs of your business together, right? You got to have a great attorney to work with. You got to have a great banker to work with. And then you also need a great business consultant. I will tell you, a lot of times what ends up happening is those relationships, starting them as early and as often as possible with your financial institution, whether they are traditional like a bank or whether they are, a CDFI, which will allow, smaller lenders, whether it's the SBA. You really have to start those relationships because, Christy, I believe that every business owner can see the value in having that relationship before you need it, because when you need it, it's probably too late. So you're absolutely right. I think that you've got to start that early. You've got to put your documents together early. But more importantly, you've got to have a collaborative effort with your lender, with your banker, with your attorney, and with your business consultant to make sure that they're the right products for you, the right terms for you, and that you have looked and dotted every I and crossed every T.
Thank you. Yes. So what I'm hearing as a business owner that we're needing some time to get funding, it starts with preparation. We got to have those relationships, and you've got to understand what the funders, the banks, or someone like ACE is looking for, so you have that package together when you do need to go. So let's talk about getting ready to get funded. And Jasmine, let's say an entrepreneur is preparing to seek funding from you. What should they have in place before they approach you as a lender?
Yeah, of course. So I would say an entrepreneur should first have a full understanding of why they need the funding. They have to be able to kind of clearly explain that to me as the lender so that I can explain it clearly to my underwriter as well. We have to be able to understand kind of how this is going to help the business grow, right? So beyond that, there are a few essentials that I think every lender is going to immediately ask for. And that's going to be your up-to-date financial statement. So your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet year to date, of course, and then your previous 2 to 3 year tax returns, depending on how long the business has been established. So we'll want, of course, a clear business plan or a growth strategy. And that's what's kind of going to help us understand how you're going to scale your business, but also make sure you understand your credit and the cash flow of your business. I say one of the biggest challenges sometimes when we speak with entrepreneurs and we ask a question about their financials, if they have to go and consult with the CPA or their bookkeeper, then it, may be time. They may not be ready at the time. They may need to kind of completely understand because there may be opportunity for them to cut costs in certain areas where they may not even need funding, right? So I also encourage entrepreneurs to kind of be realistic when they're asking or thinking about how much it is they're going to ask for. You want to make sure you're not asking for more than what's necessary. It has to, of course, make sense in order to accomplish whatever goal you have set forth, right? And then I think I speak for myself and Charles and all other lenders. When the entrepreneur comes and you want to know, okay, how much are you asking for? And their response is whatever I can get approved for. That's kind of an immediate halt, right? So we have to be able to understand what is this going to do to make your business better? And if you're asking for any amount, then you don't have a clear picture of what your goals are in order to move forward. And it's easy to kind of lose sight once you have those funds. And now you've lost your ability to pay those funds back, right? And so I will also, to piggyback off of Charles, before you are ready, make sure you're establishing those relationships. Make sure you're having those conversations with your banker. And so your banker already has that relationship. You already have an understanding of your financials. So when it comes time to take on additional capital, you kind of already have a game plan to move forward.
Thank you. Charles, what practices and financial habits should a business owner have now to become a candidate for traditional bank financing?
Well, Christy, first of all, I think that's a great question. When you start thinking about what things they need to have in order, a lot of those are going to come down to the statements that they have, right? When you start talking about being able to to create that picture that Jasmine was talking about, a lot of that comes from the financials. And so there are basically five very specific documents that, whether you're a traditional lender or you're a non-traditional lender, this is what everybody's going to look at. They're going to look at a profit and loss statement. They will look at your business balance sheet. They also will look at your cash flow statement because they want to know, even though there may not be a lot of revenue that comes from it, does the business generate a lot of cash flow or cycle a lot of cash, which could affect the terms and conditions of lending. They also going to look at your business and your personal returns. Again, business and personal. And one of the reasons why they look at both sides of the relationships is because business owners have to play that duopoly of the role, right? Yes, I am a business owner, but I also have to take care of my personal finances. And there is a balance that has to exist there in order to make you a credible lender. You cannot destroy your personal credit and then expect to rebuild under the business. One of the other things is business bank statements. Too often than not, I run into business owners who don't keep those clean records because there are transactions that come from all over the place that may or may not be associated with the business. Not a really big problem if you're just out there trying to close out your book for the month. It is a big problem when you're out there trying to gain access to a line of credit or a new equipment loan. They're going to want explanation for some of those ancillary things. So if we're looking for the five big documents that people need, profit and loss statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, business and personal tax returns, and then also your bank statements. The only thing that I would add to that is very similar to what Jasmine said, and that is what we call a borrower's profile. Now, institutions may call that something a little bit different, but what the borrower's profile forces you to do, it forces you to look at your legal structure, your ownership structure. It forces you to say, you know what, here's when we started, here's where we want to go. This is what we have or do not have in order to get us there. So it is almost like a game plan for how you want to actually use the funds that you're going to get as loan proceeds. Because now there's a clear cut path. Well, you can imagine if I've gotten those five things and I've now had a conversation with the business owner and I've got that borrower's profile, how easy is it then for me to explain the actual loan document to an underwriter, someone who's making that decision? It makes all the difference in the world. And my business owner doesn't even have to be in the room because I, as an advocate for them, have an opportunity to truly explain the ins and outs of their business and where they plan on taking that business over the next 2 to 5 years. That makes a really big difference. And I think Jasmine can agree to this. This makes everybody's job a lot easier. It's less frustrating for the banker. It's less frustrating for the underwriter. It is definitely less frustrating for our business owner. I think those are the top things that you need.
Thank you. Mia, in your job as an economic developer, what are some resources or partnerships that you think that an entrepreneur might be overlooking as they're preparing to grow?
Christy, well, I think that entrepreneurs focus first on lending or the funding source. And of course, that is understandable. But back to what Charles said, relationships. But there are so many other partners who can help them become more prepared before they ever apply for funding, for any capital. Chambers of commerce, you have your local economic development organizations, technical assistance, providers like UGA, Small Business Development Center, the SBDC, can help entrepreneurs strengthen their business plans, financial priorities and projections and growth strategies. Mentorship networks like SCORE can link business owners with experienced mentors who are and have walked the same path. Business associations and the community partners play a vital role in this. The partners can help business owners sharpen their business plan, understand their market, identify gaps, and make strategic connections. One thing I appreciate about Georgia Power's economic development team is that we look at small business and entrepreneurship as a part of a broader community ecosystem, like or through our CREATE programming, for example, cultivating resilient entrepreneurs and transforming economies. That program focuses on helping community leaders strengthen local entrepreneurship and small business support systems, identify assets and gaps, and connect with statewide partners and resources. That said, the same thing applies to individual entrepreneurs. They need to know their gaps, build their network, connect to the resources that can help them grow. So I encourage entrepreneurs to work and look around their full ecosystem and not assume that they have to navigate growth alone.
Great answer. That really a lot of insight in that. Thank you, Mia. Let's talk about Jasmine. So not everybody is a fit for the traditional bank financing, and there's alternative lending opportunities that are available. So how does your organization or organizations like ACE help bridge those capital gaps?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I'll back up a little just to explain that ACE is a CDFI, which is a community development financial institution. So what we do is we focus on those that don't necessarily qualify for traditional banking, but you have to understand banks are not our competition, right? So we're partners. So Charles and I may work together on a deal to get a loan across the board for an entrepreneur, right? So there's a variety of different financing options that ACE would offer. But of course, first you need to understand what challenges you have that would necessarily disqualify you for traditional banking, right? So because it looks different for everyone. So was it, the credit requirement? Was it the income requirement? Do you have higher debt than the banks would necessarily require? Or maybe there's a collateral shortfall. Maybe you don't have any collateral, right? So what we offer is just kind of a range of products and different services. We have a lot of different partners, but one main product I would say we have the SBA Community Advantage, which has great terms and it kind of helps for those who have a collateral shortfall, right? So we have micro loans, and then we have other partners where we may partner with them on the capital stack. So there may be 2 or 3, depending on the amount of the loan, there may be 4 different lenders for that one loan, right? So at ACE, we're going to look beyond the credit score. We're going to take the time. We want to, of course, understand the business. That's why that business plan is very important. We want to understand the owner's experience in that business, the impact that that business is making on the community, and what it is they're missing to where they're able to take that next step and get traditional funding, right? So ACE is considered temporary funding. We are a step stool to get the entrepreneurs ready to take that next step so that I can hand them off to Charles, So an amazing service we offer is, of course, technical assistance for all entrepreneurs. So whether that looks like business planning or that looks like financial coaching, or just connecting the entrepreneurs with resources and different partners that can help strengthen the business. So the goal is not necessarily, of course, to kind of get a loan and check the box, right? We want to make sure we build and continue that relationship. We set that entrepreneur up for long-term success so that they will eventually qualify for traditional banking.
Thank you. Charles, you have to say no sometimes when it comes to financing. So how does a business owner take that no and turn it into something that's a positive experience to help strengthen their business?
I'm so glad that you asked that question. And I think Jasmine actually answered a part of it, right? She says, we're not in competition. We actually work together, right? And Mia kind of alluded to this because just like we are asking business owners or instructing business owners to tap into their business ecosystem, guess what? This is ours, right? We work with economic development. We work with our CDFI partners because you would like to think that it's a one-way door. Jasmine just said, any deal that I'm going to graduate them up to a traditional bank. That's not how it works. It ultimately is a revolving door because I actually will send people back to CDFIs if there is something that we can't necessarily do. Now, I don't personally do that, but that is kind of our thought process because our goal at Truist is, we want to inspire and build better lives in communities. We realize that in order to do that, not only do we have to be part of the community, but we also have to pull in more of the community. Sometimes that doesn't mean that, I may have to tell somebody, no, not right now. It doesn't mean that it's no forever. I'm not declining a client. I'm actually declining the situation because we're looking at the ways that we can get a loan approved. And so maybe it's an opportunity to say, you know what, I need to involve some of my economic development partners to get some of those resources, right? Whether it be the SBDC, which is by the University of Georgia, whether it is the Create program, whether it is leaning on our partners over at Operation Hope, which do business and small credit and credit counseling. We do all of this because we realize that in order to uplift our business community, it has to be a group project. Everybody has their own part. Everybody has their own lane, but it's not a one-way street in any shape, form, or fashion because we are all operating within that same financial business ecosystem. So what we're trying to do is, yes, I have to tell people no, but I don't want to tell them no. I want to tell them no, but here's the reason why. I want to send you to this person. Maybe we weren't ready to cross this bridge yet. Perhaps we put the cart before the horse, and maybe there's a little bit more numbers that we need to show. And so we have to bring in the proper partners, the proper resources, and the proper support to make sure that our business owners know that this is not a matter of competition. It's a matter of uplifting all of our business community, whether it be in the chamber, whether it be in our individual programs, or whether that's just through our community ecosystem partnerships.
Yes. So Mia, let's talk about for a minute relationships and going beyond the lender. And why is it important for an entrepreneur to build a broad network of relationships? We talked about the banker, the attorney, an accountant, a business coach. Why is it important for an entrepreneur to have a broader network?
It's extremely important. While a lender can provide access to capital, a broader network provides access to opportunities. Entrepreneurs who build strong relationships within the business ecosystem are more likely to learn about supplier opportunities, procurement contracts, industry trends, and resources that can help them grow. From an economic development perspective, I'd say relationships with, again, like I said, with the chambers and their local economic development organizations, business leaders, and community partners can open doors to valuable information, strategic connections, and new markets. Often, the right introduction can help a business identify an opportunity, navigate a challenge, so that you don't have to go through something because you're working with someone who can share with you what they went through. Connect with the customer or supplier that accelerates growth. Entrepreneurs should not ever wait until they need funding to start building relationships. By then, it's too late. I encourage entrepreneurs to view relationship building as part of their growth strategy. Capital matters, absolutely. It's necessary, absolutely. But relationships often help entrepreneurs become more prepared and more visible when opportunity arrives, and help position a business for long-term success within the broader business system. And that is what you want as a small business and an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So, what we've been talking about is that a no is not necessarily a no, it's a not yet, and it doesn't mean never. But you need to understand your options, your resources that are available, and as Mia said, you've got to continue strengthening your business so you can create new opportunities, and that's done by strengthening that base of people. So, Charles, when we talk about financial literacy for entrepreneurs, what do business owners absolutely need to understand about their numbers?
Great question. What do they need to know about their numbers? And I tell this all the time. I'm sure if you ran into me in any business coaching setting, I've always said this. Treat your business like long division. You got to be able to show your work, right? A lot of times business owners will get in front of us and the first thing they say is, to me, is point, hey, look, I'm ready to borrow. Well, you just started a business a couple of weeks ago, right? Let's figure out how we can cast a vision first. Get in front of the right information, the right education, the right resources. So that way, when you get asked anything outside of a surface level question about your finances, about your vision, about where this business is going to go or where they come from, that at that point, as a business owner, you now have the ability to supply a fervent answer. That makes all the difference in the world. I mentioned, this once before in a training class, and it kind of hit home with what Mia was saying. The network makes all the difference in the world because it opens up the door for opportunities. A lot of business owners, especially when they first get started, they go into hyperdrive. I'm CEO, I'm CEO, I'm CEO, and I make all the decisions and I'm a solopreneur. I'm going to make this work. What they don't realize is that they spend way too much time leaning into the CEO title and not enough time leaning into the CMO title, which is Chief Marketing Officer. When you get in these rooms, there are lenders there. When you get in those rooms, there are people that can help you go further. There are people who can introduce you to new clients. There are people who can actually help you avoid mistakes that they may have made in their business. That's where the value of those relationships come from. But if you're not in the room, if you have not plugged your business into that business ecosystem, it makes it very, very difficult for you to get that information. Now, there are sources that are out there all over the place. I mentioned a few. Mia has mentioned a few. Even Jasmine has mentioned a few. You got the Small Business Development Center. You have your Chamber of Commerce where there's always business education happening, especially here in Henry County. We always have a great list of things that are coming up that people can plug into. We have, training that I personally do. I've seen Jasmine go in and actually work with entrepreneurs. And so what you're talking about is literally getting across the desk with somebody who actually is in the industry, right? A lot of times I'll be business owners, they say, oh man, I've got a great consultant. They told me what I should do. And they gave me some tax advice. They gave me some corporation advice. They gave me some business advice. And I asked them, I said, well, what does this person who gave you the advice do for a living? They say, oh, well, they work for a company. They used to be a business owner years and years ago. Well, years and years ago, it's fine. But we all know business changes on a dime in this day and age. And so a lot of times you have to realize that if I'm not plugged into a network, I never know where that change happens. And so resource wise, you've got to make sure that you're just connected. Collaboration is a new form of currency. And so a lot of times what people don't realize is that being in partnership, being in association with someone may help you win the contract. It may get you in a room where there's an RFP, right? Request for a proposal that's out there that now, because you've shown your work, you're connected to the right people, you've had the right resources. Now, all of a sudden, you're in position to bid for that contract. That makes a really big difference, as opposed to reading about it on the back end and saying, I was too small to get in on that. Your partners will open up the doors for you to plug into a network and plug into an ecosystem that allows you to do very, very well if you're willing to participate in collaboration.
Absolutely. Jasmine, building off of what Charles just said, let's talk about or hear from you on how we can more effectively use the capital once we receive it, that we're doing all these things that we're talking about. So what's something else that we can do to use that capital more effectively?
Yeah, and I think Charles kind of answered that as well, but financial literacy is just kind of very, very important, right? So us as lenders, we're looking for the business owners that understand their numbers. As Charles said, their cash flow, profit margin. So we're not just looking at, the revenue. We're looking at their net profit. We're looking at how you were able to actively use those funds, how you're able to utilize those expenses, and what do you have left over, right? Because ultimately, that's going to let us know how you're going to be able to repay that debt, right? So when an entrepreneur can confidently explain those things, it gives us the confidence and the ability to kind of manage and, sell the deal when it gets to underwriting and when it gets to the final decision maker, right? So once you receive those funds, this is where the financial literacy is even more important because it's going to help the entrepreneur spend their money with a purpose, and that purpose that is intended for, right? So that's that accountability piece. And then we're able to kind of monitor the return on that investment and avoid like pitfalls, So sometimes you get thrown curveballs because of course life happens, right? We just want to make sure the entrepreneurs are active in obtaining that financial literacy because it'll kind of help you be able to navigate through those twists and turns of life and still properly utilize those funds as well as like avoiding commingling personal expenses and different things like that, right? So at ACE, of course, we believe that the education and capital goes hand in hand. So we're not just offering entrepreneurs the capital, we're going to partner you with a business advisor that's going to help you become, more equipped with knowledge and resources that you need to make that financing work, right? So as Charles said, the loan opens the door, but the financial literacy is what's going to help build confidence and ensure that you're able to kind of sustain that growth in your business.
Okay. So, Mia, you have an entrepreneur that comes to you. They have a really strong vision for growth, but they're intimidated by the financial side of running a business. So, what would you say to that person?
I would say take a deep breath and I would tell them you are not alone. And feeling intimidated does not mean you are not capable. So that's very important to convey. Many business owners are excellent at their product, excellent at what they do, their craft, their service, but the financial side can feel a bit overwhelming at first. And that's logical. The good news is that financial knowledge can be learned over time. You've just got to be willing to do all the things that have been discussed here today. Make sure you're showing up in the room, that you're connecting and partnering and doing what you need to do for practical application in learning more about how to make your business grow and be successful. My advice would be to ask questions early, seek out trusted advisors, and take advantage of those available resources mentioned earlier, such as lenders, small business development centers, SCORE mentors, accountants, attorneys, and business support organizations. Start by understanding the basics, all of the things that both Jasmine and Charles have spoke about, your cash flow, your expenses, your financial goals, and build your knowledge step by step. Rome wasn't built in a day. And your business is not going to be built in a day. And you need to understand that. You do not have to know everything at once, but you do need to be willing to learn and surround yourself with people who can help you. I think it's very important to remember that the most successful entrepreneurs are not necessarily the ones who know everything. They are the ones who are willing to learn, seek guidance, and use the resources around them. Growth becomes less intimidating when you are prepared, informed, and connected to the right support.
That's a great summary. I'm going to just ask this one question in one sentence from all three of you, and we'll start with Jasmine. Give me one action that an entrepreneur can take this week to become better positioned for future growth.
I would say one action would be to begin building those relationships. One of the best things you can do this week is to schedule a meeting with the lender maybe at your current bank or a different lender that you've been looking at or thinking about and maybe referred to, go ahead and start having those conversations now so that you can build those relationships for when it's time in the future.
Charles, same question.
I've got to tell them to do one action this week, outside of what Jasmine just recommended. I would tell them to spend time on their why, right? A lot of times people tend to stray away from their purpose and why they got into a business. Well, a lot of business owners don't realize that your purpose is what keeps you grounded. Your purpose makes you stay up late, get up early. If you're an entrepreneur and you're on that grind, guess what? The money that you're going to make is not going to wake you up every morning, right? But the purpose behind building that business for whatever it is, to create a legacy, to pass on, to take care of your parents, to earn a living, to reduce your debt, to build a legacy, regardless of what that is. I tell people all the time, if the why is big enough, the how doesn't matter. That's what's going to wake you up early. That's what's going to keep you up late. That's what's going to keep you engaged to go and find those partners that can take you to the next level. And so that's why I would tell business owners to focus in on.
Thank you so much. Mia.
This week, identify one gap in your business and connect with a resource, an advisor, or organization that can help you address it. Let's think about one practical step, whether that is financial records or marketing or operations, supplier readiness, access to customers, whatever that thing is. The thing is to take one practical step. Growth becomes more achievable when you know where you need support and you're willing to connect with the people who can help you. And you've got to do the work. You've got to show up early and you've got to sometimes stay late. But you have to be present.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for sharing your expertise and practical guidance with us today. Access to capital is about more than finding the money. It's about preparation, relationships, financial knowledge, and knowing how to connect with the right resources at the right time. As we recognize National Black Business Month, we celebrate the entrepreneurs who strengthen our economy, create jobs, innovate, and contribute to the vitality of our communities. And we encourage every entrepreneur watching today to keep learning, keep building relationships, and keep preparing for the opportunities ahead. Thank you to Kaiser Permanente for proudly sponsoring Community Dialogue and supporting conversations that help strengthen our business and our communities. I'm Christy Chewning. Thank you for watching Community Dialogue, and we'll see you next time.